Hello, I'm Frank McSheen with Square Peg Consulting at the Whiteboard. I'm a supply chain cash guide, and these are the components of the business-to-business supply chain as I see it. And there are opportunities to generate more cash in every part of this process. Let me show you what I mean. Hello. Today we're going to talk about a concept that's a combination of the planning process and the make process within our B2B supply chain framework. And it's a choice which I call to push or to pull. And so it refers to a manufacturing strategy of either manufacturing and making based on production capability and capacity, or that's called a push, or is it based on demand from the customers, which is really called a pull process. Examples of the push process could be a paper mill where you've got a paper machine that's supposed to run at a certain rate 24/7. So the tons of paper are coming off, period. They're coming. And you've got to be able to satisfy that need plus your customer's need, sometimes balancing inventory in between, but making sure we're not outrunning our demand more than we need to. On the demand side, we're a make-to-order business where we're getting demand in and we fulfill that order as quickly, as leanly, with as little inventory as possible. Now, my experience is there's not a totally right answer one way or the other. It's a little bit of a balancing act. And what happens if you increase your production capability beyond your demand, you end up with work in process inventory going up. And it'll get to pretty extreme levels pretty quickly. I had a client in Pennsylvania making carbon parts, and they were using a push model. And as they got behind and late on orders, they would push more orders out on the floor. And it got to the point where the machine operators had this stack of orders and parts from the previous step in front of them so tall they couldn't even see the person behind them. And the orders that they needed to work on were on the bottom, and all they could do was take the orders off the top. So they were working out of sequence. The orders on the bottom were getting later and later. And because they're getting later and later, the production planning people kept pushing more out onto the floor. So the WIP pile got even higher. I have another client that makes modular buildings. And they got a big order for a bunch of modules. And their framing capacity, which is the first step, can outrun their finishing capacity currently. And so they framed up all of the modules. Now they're stuck in the plant, and the finishing group is now trying to finish them. And guess what? We don't get paid until we finish them. We don't get paid for framing. And so this is an important concept to strike a balance. My experience is that operators out on the shop floor, they need to see a little bit of work coming at them. If it's too much, like the Pennsylvania example, they're overwhelmed. They're going to pick and choose the easiest thing to get to, and it'll screw up the order, the manufacturing order and the manufacturing schedule. On the other hand, if it's too little, there's not any WIP out there, they'll slow down because they're afraid they're going to run out of work. So we've got to find a balance between these two forces that gives you an optimal amount of WIP, work in process inventory. It gives you some choices. If there's a material shortage, for example, on a certain order, you can shift to another one and keep things flowing while you move that one aside until the material shortage is solved. So that right balance is really important. If you get also the right balance, you'll find that your throughput will increase and you'll invoice faster. Again, cash goes up. If you get too much of it, it's the irony of the push system. If you push too much out there, throughput actually slows down, which is what you're trying to avoid, but you're actually causing it and causing it to yourself, doing it to yourself. So we got to find this balance somewhere. It's a different story for each situation. But that's part of the work we do, is to figure out what's the right balance between that push and pull so we get the optimal flow, increase our cash generation, reduce the throughput time, get to the customer as quickly as possible.